Have you ever wondered why some guitar parts lift the whole worship experience while others might feel awkward and they don't make an impact? Well, here's the truth. You don't really need to learn more scales or any fancy techniques in order to kind of level up your guitar playing. Instead, I'm going to show you a system that I discovered. It's a framework that's really transformed my playing from kind of scattered and all over the place to purposeful worship guitar playing. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to move from random playing to more intentional and deliberate playing, and it's really a lot simpler than you might think. This approach works whether you're just starting out and you're looking at improving your playing and taking it to the next level. Now, today's journey is going to take us through three essential phases. First of all, we've got the technical foundation. When you get that right, that's when you start getting confidence in terms of how you play guitar. The second phase is really all about artistic expression, and that is where you can kind of bring an element of beauty to your playing, that it's no longer just notes, but it actually communicates something. And then thirdly and finally, there's the spiritual purpose behind the thing that really makes it super meaningful and what we are supposed to be doing as worship guitarists. It's not just about the technical stuff, it's not just about creative expression, but it's really about the spiritual intent that we have when we're playing, especially when we come together in corporate worship. Now, by the end of this video, you'll understand not just what to play, but how to play it, when to use specific techniques, and most importantly, why this all matters. Let's dig in. All right, so let me show you something that is really interesting, and I think it'll communicate a lot to you as it relates to what notes you want to choose when you play. Just look at the text on screen right now. Now, these random letters, they are much like a lot of lead guitar parts. It's kind of chaotic, it's meaningless, and it doesn't really communicate anything. But look what happens when we go ahead and we arrange these notes intentionally. Now it says, "Let everything that has breath praise the Lord." So just like these letters need purpose and structure in order to be meaningful, in the same way you need to learn how to arrange the notes on the guitar in an intentional and deliberate manner so that it fits around the chords that you are playing. Because the chords that you are playing over, certain notes will have more meaning and impact based on the chords. So that's why it's really important for you to have that same approach when it comes to organizing random letters into a meaningful and impactful phrase. Because really that's all that music is. It's a different form of language that communicates something. So let's go ahead and then let me just show you the following. This is a scale that we have right here in the key of C. And a lot of people, when they play guitar, they want to come up with guitar parts, they just look at the scale. Alright, so that was just a C major scale all over the neck. Now, when we have a progression, let's just say we'll play a 1-4-6-5 and then going into 6-4-1-5. So in plain language, that'll be C, F, A minor, G for our first part of the progression. Then we'll have A minor, F, C, G. That's two very common progressions that you'll find in worship music. But what a lot of guitar players do when they try and get something that is melodically going to fit over those chords is they just look at the key of the song and then they go ahead and they grab a scale. That is one of the biggest mistakes that you can do, because then when you're playing those notes from the scale kind of in a random fashion over the chords, it's kind of like the example that I showed you. It's just a bunch of jumbled up letters. But when you rearrange those notes, then you are going to go ahead and actually find something that can communicate some melodic ideas as it relates to what you want to play. So what you want to do there is you want to, instead of looking at just the one scale, you want to go ahead and find the triads within the scales. Why triads? Well, triads, those are the building blocks of any chord. So a major chord will have 1, 3, 5. That'll be a major triad, and a minor chord will have 1, flat 3, and 5. So instead of just looking at my scale, you want to go ahead and say this is C, and be able to play. That'll be the notes for C. Then you also get it for F. You get it for A minor. And you also get it for G. When you can go ahead and play triads over a progression, you're going to find a way that you can actually more instinctively arrange your notes. So what I'm going to do for you right now is I'm just going to take a couple of triads. I'm going to play C over here. Then I'm going to do F. Then I'm going to do A minor. Then I'm going to go and do G. I'm going to take those notes and I'm going to go ahead and play more of a melodic idea using those same notes. Then the progression is going to change. We are going to go to A minor, F, and then C, and G. So for that I'm going to play A minor, F, C, and G. Now when you play just the triads, it's not going to sound like a melodic part, but I'm going to do it the first time. I'm going to play just a chord, followed by a melodic part using the same notes with a slight tweak, which I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. I'll do that for both of those parts. So let's go ahead and cue the track. I'm going to play the triads the first time and then the lead line the second time. Check it out. Alright, so let's just have a look at what happened there. What I did is I basically used the triad notes just to kind of highlight the chord tones that I can play. The reason it's important is when the chart says C major, you're going to play over a C chord. If you play a C triad, all three of those notes are going to work super well within that chord. So for the first part that I played in that song, I played E that went to G, which is coming from the triad shape. But instead of playing it as a chord shape, I played those same notes as individual notes. So you can see that E and G is the same as this. Then when we went to F, I played F to A. But instead of just playing F and A like that, I played F, G, A. So it's the same two notes, but I'm adding in the G note that slides into the A. By the way, if you want to get the backing track I'm playing over and the tabs, you can go ahead and just check out the link in the description. So I did that same thing for A. It's coming from the triad, but then I played it as single notes. And then for G, G to B, I played. So by looking at the triads, C, F, A minor, and G, I can now find notes that I can play a lead line with. And that's a cool way in which you can go ahead and use the triad shapes to show you what notes to play. So that kind of takes care of our first part of our lesson here. We are taking all those random notes from the scale and we are organizing them so that they fit over the chords that we are playing. And once we know what those notes are, like we said, let everything that has breath praise the Lord, we can now start looking into some artistic expression. Because at the end of the day, we know it's not just what you say, but it's really how you say it. So now that you know what notes that you can play, we can look at how can you breathe some life into those notes? And you can kind of think about this like having a conversation. You choose the words you're going to use, but then you also decide how you're going to say them. So in this example that I've just played, there was a couple of things that I was able to do. For example, some volume swells. And then some connecting tones. What you don't want to do is always just use the triads, because if you just use the triads, it's going to become very kind of trite and predictable. Instead, you want to go ahead and use some notes that are not necessarily part of the triad as well as connecting tones. So for example, if you wanted to play F that goes to A, within the triad you can play F that then slides to A. Then I did the same, E that slides into the A from G, and then for G that slides into the B from A. So in essence, what we have here is three things. You have a starting tone and you have a target tone. Both of those in this instance came from the triad shape, but then in between you want to go ahead and use what's known as a connecting tone. And you can also go ahead and use articulation, the hammer-ons, the slides, the pull-offs, the vibrato, to kind of make the notes kind of ring out in a different way. And you can also go ahead and look into your dynamic control. Sometimes you might want to use palm muted notes versus non-palm muted notes. And that's what I want to show you in this example real quick. I know what notes I'm going to play, but then I'm going to use my dynamic control in order to create some more variety. Check this out. Alright, so what you saw there, I was using some different things that I'm contrasting against each other. So I've got palm muted notes versus non-palm muted notes. When you combine and contrast those two things together, you get a cool sound. Also, I had kind of busy parts followed by long ringing notes. So I started it off like this. And then I let that note ring out. I can also go ahead and do slides. So that is, I'm using the triads to go ahead and determine what notes to play, and then I can use dynamic control, palm muting versus non-palm muting, as well as some articulation techniques to go ahead and give me some interesting parts there. Let's check out another example where I'm now going to do this in terms of like finding the notes I'm going to play, but then using a combination of articulation and these dynamic control techniques to go ahead and I've figured out what I'm going to play, but now the how I'm going to play it, that's adding in some creative expression there. Check this out. Alright, so in this instance, the chords that we had over there, it was 1, 6, 1, 5, 6, 4. So for 1, 6, of course, I've just had C, that then went to A minor. So I played, you can see that this is an extra note that I added into the triad, because really it's just playing C, E, and G. But if I play it as a shape, it doesn't sound like a lead line, whereas if I'm going to play C, E, G, that sounds cool, and then I can use my hammer-on onto the D note over here. And then I did the same for A minor. Instead of just playing C, E, A, I played C, D. And I can either slide from the E into the A, or I can pick the E to the A. So hopefully that kind of gives you an example of how I'm using the triads to show me what to play, but then I'm using some creative expression in terms of how I'm playing it. For the second part, it was basically C, G, A minor, and F. And then I just used those same notes from the progression together with some phrasing and articulation. So see, I'm pulling off from the C to the B as I'm going to go to the G chord. So it's really a combination of articulation techniques and then phrasing and kind of playing with the feel of the notes. So you don't always play things exactly on the beat. You want to kind of use a bit more creative expression, because if you play things always exactly on the beat and we expect them to be played, then that can become a little bit predictable and sound a little bit robotic. So make sure that once you have the notes that you're going to play, number one, then using articulation and dynamic control like I've shown you with palm muting and notes that are ringing, etc. That's the second thing. Then you can start playing with the timing, where you can go ahead and add some emphasis and expression on certain notes so that it kind of sounds a little bit more vocal. Now the last technique I want to show you as it relates to some creative expression is really what's known as the call and response phrasing technique. What that basically means is you're playing something that sounds like a call, and then you have another part that is a response to that. That's something that you find in blues music a lot, where there's call and response in the solo of the guitar playing, or it can be call and response between you as the guitar player and another musician. It just basically, it's like a conversation. When you're speaking with somebody, they might say something and then you respond, and then you say something and then they respond. It's kind of like that, a dance between the two separate ideas. It's happening in communication and connection. So as we know, worship is both of those things. It's communication and it's connection. It's us communicating to God what He means to us, who He is, and just really praising Him for everything He's done, who He is, and those things that He's still about to do. So that's the communication part of that. But once we engage in that act of worship, we are really fulfilling our spiritual design, the reason why we've been created. And we started this by saying, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. There's a connection that happens when that is in place through the communication and the connection. So call and response is really just a way in which we can go ahead and do that musically. You play something and you respond to it. What I'm going to do now is I want to play a little part right here. We're going to see me play a call and then do a response. A different call and a response. And I'm using all the techniques we've done so far, which is the triads to allocate and identify what notes I'm going to play, deciding how I'm going to play those notes, and then using call and response to bring in some of the communication and connection ideas. Let's check it out. Alright, so that's a very simple line that I played there, but I'm using call and response together with the phrasing and articulation we've done so far. So the call is basically just this. Over the E chord, I'm just playing the G sharp, which is coming from that triad. Then for the response, I'm playing, because that's going to a B chord. So I have a call, followed by a response. Then I have a call again, and the response again. Cool. The response. The cool. The response. So when next time you do that, try and see how you can create some more complete phrases. Because if you are in a conversation and you just blurt out random facts and figures and random words at random times, it's not going to really contribute to the conversation as opposed to saying something that is going to have an impact, it's going to give an insight, and it's actually going to add value to the conversation. That's kind of what you want to do with your guitar playing. Don't just grab a scale and blurt out random notes and words like you would do in a conversation. Make sure you listen to what's happening and then responding accordingly. And that's what the call and response technique can help you with. Let me play one more example to kind of show you some of the articulation techniques and phrasing techniques as it relates to what I can do over this same progression. Check it out. Alright, so for that example, we had the same thing again. It's the 1-5-6-4 progression in E, which is E, B, C sharp minor, A. So for the E, I just played an E note. And that comes from this triad over here. And then I had a bit of a phrase. See, all of that is based around this triad. So the triad gives me the majority of the notes, and I've got one non-chord tone for a bit of spice. And then I'm going to this note over here, which is the third of B. Then I add my phrasing, as I go back to this E note, and this time it's over the C sharp minor chord. So it's the third, the minor third of the C sharp minor chord, and then the same phrase again. And then this section here fits over my A chord. So for my triads, I had E, B, C sharp minor, and then A. So that's how I determined what notes I'm going to play. That was our level 1. We just found that with the triad shapes. The second level is the artistic expression using dynamics, using ringing notes, using palm muting and non-palm muting, using hammer-ons, pull-offs, vibrato, all the articulation, and then playing with the timing and introducing some kind of a call and response, and then that gives me the part you've just heard over there. So go ahead and give that a shot next time you come up with guitar parts. To determine what you're going to play, make sure you can see the triads in there, and then how are you going to play it? Well, that's really going to help you using articulation and phrasing like I've just shown you, and then you can go ahead and really level up your musical choices as it relates to what you're going to play. Then our third level is figuring out, well, when are you going to play certain things? Some of this I've already kind of shown you. That's really about just getting your timing right and deciding when you are going to play. But this is really one of the areas where a lot of guitarists kind of miss the mark. They focus so much on what they want to play that they forget about when they want to play things. And space, in this instance, is just as important as sound. Now, you saw me in the previous section when it comes to how you're playing things. These things is using contrast, palm muted notes versus ringing notes, busy notes versus longer notes, and using phrasing, hammer-ons, pull-offs, vibrato, all those kind of things to add a vocal quality, and then chord and response to kind of make it sound a bit more like a conversation. But sometimes the best thing that you can do is actually not playing or just leaving some space. And that's really where you need to start listening and understanding the musical space. Next time you put on one of your favorite worship songs, go and listen to the amount of space that exists between the notes that the guitarists are playing. And when you learn how to read a worship moment, listening to what the rest of the band is doing, listening to what the worship leader is doing, and also kind of reading the energy of the moment, then you can go ahead and decide, is it time to play a supporting role? We're just going to create some textures, you're going to add rhythm and kind of drive, add it to the harmony or whatever the case will be. Or are there other times when it's becoming a little bit more of a leading role? We're going to play a melody that kind of sings out and stands out, like some of the examples I've shown you so far. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to combine all these things and decide when are you going to leave space and when are you going to go ahead and introduce tension that you can go ahead and release. Tension is really just when there's a bit of a tense moment that might be happening on the guitar, like this, for example. So that's just resolving a 5-1 progression. So you want to create some tension and then also be able to resolve it. So tension and resolution. Secondly is going to be repetition, and then thirdly is going to be leaving some space. So I went ahead and created a part over here which is taking pretty much all the examples and ideas we've looked at so far, but I'm going to use repetition, I'm going to create some tension, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space. Specifically in this instance, I'm not going to play on beat 1. I'm actually going to leave beat 1 open and then I'm going to come in. That's my space. The repetition will be the same thing that I'm going to play over and over, and then the tension, I'm going to show you how I'm creating that. So let's go ahead and play this with a track right now. Alright, so that's a fairly simple part. Let me go ahead and just break it down for you. The progression that I'm playing over is 6, 4, 1, 5. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and just map out the progression itself. So we've got 6 is A minor, 4 is F, and I can also play it over there, F. Then we add C, there or there, and then we add G, there or there. But now in the A minor instance, what I'm doing is I'm going from A to C, but I'm using the B note here as a passing tone. So I'm going from A to C, but I'm using the B as a passing tone. We've looked at that before. Then I'm doing the exact same thing over F, but just look at this. When I play F, like this, or like that, I can go from the A to the C. A and C, that's part of the A minor chord, as well as A and C is also part of the F major chord. So now I can go ahead and play. I'm actually repeating that line that I've just played, and then when you play a B note over an F like this, you can hear that it's a very tense sound. It's because we call that a sharp 4. But because I've already played the idea and then I'm repeating the idea, it actually sounds cool. So I'm creating a bit of tension that I can resolve. And then when we go to C, which is the third chord, then I'm starting on the G note there, which is in my C chord right there, or there. And then for the final phrase, coming down the melody there again. So it's a matter of repeating the same phrase 3 times. Second time. Third time. And then I'm just coming down. So I had 3 times I went up and the 4th time I'm coming down. So that's kind of part of your creative expression as it relates to how you want to go ahead and decide what you're going to play, and also deciding when you're going to be playing. So you notice in this example, I did not play on beat 1. It was 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. So by leaving that space on beat 1, I can be a little bit more intentional with regards to how I'm going to play it and when I'm going to play it. So the third and final phase, once you've got the technical foundation done, you've kind of worked on your artistic expression in terms of like how you are going to play those ideas, then it's really important to understand this third part, which is really the spiritual purpose behind us all. So this final piece will kind of transform your playing from just mere notes and rhythms on the guitar into something that is kind of ministry. It's expanding the kingdom. It's adding eternal value by creating an atmosphere and an environment where people can go ahead and engage in deep moments of worship. It's that communication and connection that we are facilitating. So everything that we've learned in this video and really on this channel, it's there to serve this greater purpose. And that's why the reason that we develop these skills is so that we can serve the song, that we can support the worship environment by creating that atmosphere and really by facilitating that connection. So don't get so focused on what you're going to play or really how you're going to play it and the when part of it as well, what you're going to be playing. Really be focused and aware of why you are doing all of this, because when you are doing that, it just really changes the whole intention behind why you want to work on improving your worship guitar skills. It's kind of like that story where two different guys, someone asked him what they were doing, and the first guy, his response was just he's busy laying bricks. He was building something, he's busy laying bricks. That was his focus. It was really focused on the technical side of what he was doing. And then when the person asked somebody else what they were doing, they were also laying bricks, but their response was, I'm building a cathedral. So you can see the reason why you do something beyond your actions. That is really something that's going to influence your decisions, your devotion and your dedication, and your consistency with which you want to develop and improve your skills, be a good steward with what's been entrusted into your hands, and how you go ahead and use that to serve the greater cause behind this all. So if you found this helpful and you want to strengthen your technical foundation as it relates to developing the techniques so that you can do all these things that we've just spoken about, while this video on 5 techniques worship guitar players need will really help you, because that's where I break down specific techniques that will build the confidence and will really help you lead worship every Sunday on your guitar in a more effective and confident manner. So you can go ahead and watch that video right now by clicking here. And remember, worship leading and playing worship on your guitar isn't about perfection, it's about the purpose behind it all. So keep that front and center as you work on developing your worship guitar skills. I'll see you in this video.